Mom, what happened?
She collapsed. I just tried to help her.
Have you ever witnessed something so unsettling, so completely out of place, that your brain refused to accept it as real for several seconds? That's exactly what happened to Caleb Ryder, a well-known member of the Steel Stallions Motorcycle Club. A man who'd survived bar fights, desert storms, and cross-country rides suddenly felt his world tilt off its axis the moment he saw her, his mother, leaning helplessly against a stone pillar at the edge of his property, held upright by a shivering, homeless young woman. Before we dive into the story, I want to know, where are you watching this from? Drop your city and country in the comments right now. Are you watching from your living room in Texas, your kitchen in London, your office break room in Canada? Let me know, because this story about courage, community, and protection is universal. It crosses borders. And I want to see how far this message reaches today. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our new stories. All right, let's go back. Caleb's Harley rumbled down the snowy road just after sunrise, the tires crunching over ice as he pulled up to his rural Arizona home, a lodge-style property he'd built for his mother, Martha Ryder, after her dementia progressed. He'd come home early from a 3-day bike run after having a strange feeling all night that something was wrong. He couldn't explain it, but it gnawed at him like a loose chain slapping the frame. The minute he turned into the long driveway, that feeling turned into shock. The side gate, one Caleb had been meaning to repair for weeks, was wide open, the electronic lock blinking red. But that wasn't what made his heart plummet. What made him stumble off the bike before it fully stopped, what made his breath turn to shards of ice in his chest, was the sight of Martha, barefoot in the freezing morning cold, wearing nothing but her thin cotton nightdress, leaning heavily into the arms of a frail young woman who looked barely 20. The woman's clothes were threadbare, her hair tangled beneath a knitted cap, her lips blue from the cold, and yet she'd wrapped her entire body around Martha like a shield, protecting her with everything she had left. "Mom!" Caleb yelled, dropping his helmet as he sprinted forward. "Mom, talk to me!" Martha blinked up at him, her eyes cloudy and lost. "Tommy," she whispered, using the name of Caleb's late father, "is it time to go home?" "Mom, it's me, it's Caleb," he said, voice cracking as he pulled her close. "What are you doing out here? God, you're freezing." The young woman holding her wavered on her feet. Caleb noticed then how violently she was shivering. Her thin sweatshirt was soaked from snow, and she was clutching a cheap fleece blanket around them both. "Hey," Caleb said, turning to her. "Are you okay? Who are you? What happened?" Her lips trembled as she tried to speak. I found her. She was wandering near the road. I didn't want to leave her alone. I tried to keep her warm. She didn't finish. Her knees buckled. Caleb caught her before she hit the ground. Up close, he saw how cold she really was. Her fingernails purple, her cheeks pale, her body limp from battling the night. "My name is Riley," she murmured faintly. Please tell me she's okay." "You kept her alive," Caleb said, stunned. But even as he said it, Riley went still in his arms, her eyes rolling closed. Hey, stay with me!" Caleb shouted, lifting both women with desperate strength. He didn't know her story, her past, or how she'd ended up here. All he knew was this: a homeless stranger had nearly frozen to death trying to protect his mother. And now, he wasn't letting either of them slip away. As Caleb rushes them inside, he discovers something tucked into Riley's backpack, something that shocks him even more than finding her on his porch. But what was it? And why did his mother react the moment she saw it?
Caleb half-carried, half-dragged both women into the warm foyer, slamming the door against the knife-edge wind. The house smelled like motor oil and coffee, homey in a way that made Martha's thin shoulders tremble with relief, as if warmth itself could stitch pieces of memory back into place. He set them on the sofa, stripped off Riley's sodden cap and coat, folded them like precious, fragile things, and ran to the kitchen for anything that could heat a body fast. A flask of strong coffee, a thick wool blanket from the hall closet, and an electric space heater he kept for late-night garage work. Riley lay like a broken thing, shivering convulsively beneath the blanket. Her skin had a hard, frosty sheen that worried Caleb more than he'd like to admit. He wrapped both women with the blanket and trained the heater on them while he dialed 911. He'd learned in his years on rides and roadside rescues that once someone dipped into severe hypothermia, professional care had to follow. While they waited for the ambulance lights to appear like slowly blinking fireflies down the drive, Caleb watched Martha closely. For a moment, her gaze cleared, an island of lucidity in an ocean of confusion. She reached out with a trembling hand toward Riley's backpack, which lay on the rug where Caleb had dropped it, zipper half open. "Don't touch it," Riley whispered. Her voice was small, coated with cold, but there was a fierce protectiveness in it that surprised Caleb. "Please, don't." Martha's hand closed around Riley's knuckles before Caleb could stop her. In one fluid motion, she reached into the backpack and pulled out a small, weathered Polaroid that had been tucked into a zippered pocket. The photograph's edges were softened with age. The image inside showed a young woman, clearly Martha in her prime, cradling an infant wrapped in a frayed patterned blanket. Someone had written on the back in uneven, deliberate script, "For Anna, with all my love, 1999. Martha's lips formed the name like a prayer. "Anna," she said, and the single word hung in the air like a bell. Riley's eyes flew open. For the first time since Caleb found them, her expression was not blank with freezing fatigue, but shot through with a wild, incredulous light. She reached for the photo with hands that no longer trembled from cold, but from something else, something like recognition or dread. That's my name. Anna Marie. My birth name." The words came like a released dam. "My foster mom, she gave me the name Riley when I was 10. I always wondered why I had this little Polaroid. I thought I found it in a box downtown, and I kept it. I never knew who she was." Caleb's head snapped up. The heater hummed, the coffee steamed. On the other side of the couch, the old woman, Martha, stared at Riley with sudden clarity and a face that had gone, for a flash, decades younger. She squinted as if trying to read the handwriting. "Anna," she repeated, and then to Caleb, "He named her after the river." The phrase landed like a key in the locked bore. He named her after the river. Caleb had grown up hearing stories about the family's past, about his father and the mistakes that had fractured them. But no one had ever mentioned a granddaughter. No one had ever said the name Anna. "Mom?" Caleb felt the word thrum through his chest with equal parts hope and alarm. "You mean this girl, she could be—" Riley cradled the photo to her chest as if it were proof that the world could be kinder than she'd been taught to expect. Tears carved frozen tracks down her cheeks. "I don't know. I don't even know where I was born. My foster records were a mess. I've been piecing together my life with scraps." Caleb's gut clenched. 1,000 questions fired at him. How would this be possible? Why would Martha have a picture with that inscription? Why would a Polaroid of his mother and a baby end up with a homeless young woman? His protective instincts bristled, not only for his mother, but now for this stranger who might be family. The ambulance arrived then, blue lights slicing through white morning. 2 EMTs moved with practiced calm, checking vitals, wrapping Riley in thermal blankets, and insisting Martha come with them for observation as well. A neighbor, an older man named Hank, who lived 3 houses down and always seemed to appear whenever Caleb needed him, stood at the door. "What's going on?" Caleb slid the Polaroid into his pocket before anyone else could see it, the paper barely warm against his fingers. "Found them by the gate. Anna, was with Mom all night. She saved her." As the EMTs loaded them into the ambulance, Caleb felt the world pivot. If Riley was in any way connected to his family, if that single name on the back of a faded photo meant anything, then a history they'd kept buried might be surfacing in the most unexpected way. He climbed into his truck and followed the ambulance with the Polaroid, like a talisman burning in his jacket. He had to know more. He needed answers. And he had a sinking, stubborn certainty that the old hospital name scribbled faintly on the back of that photo, almost illegible, was the first breadcrumb. Back at the house, Caleb flips the Polaroid and squints at the faint hospital stamp. His jaw drops. It's the same maternity ward his family once had ties to, a place his father refused to speak about. When he pulls up the hospital records late that night, what he discovers will change everything he thought he knew about his family's past.
The emergency room was awake in its usual way. Bright lights humming, nurses moving like practiced shadows, the scent of antiseptic thick in the air. Caleb walked the cold tile floors with the restless pacing of a man whose heart hadn't yet caught up with the shock of the morning. His mother was settled in a warm room where a nurse monitored her vitals. Riley, Anna, had been taken 2 doors down, wrapped in heated blankets, a warming IV bringing life back into her limbs. Caleb wasn't used to feeling helpless. On the road, he handled anything. Busted axles, injured riders, fights that broke out at gas stations. He was the one people looked to. But now, with his mother sleeping and this stranger possibly tied to his family in ways he didn't yet understand, Caleb felt unsteady in a way he hadn't since he was a teenager, fumbling through grief after losing his dad. He slipped into the empty family waiting room, sat down heavily, and pulled the Polaroid back out of his jacket pocket. The little square photo seemed to radiate something more powerful than a simple memory. He turned it over. Under better lighting, the faint purple stamp became clearer. Mesa Valley Medical Center, Maternity Unit, December 1999. A hospital Caleb's father, Tom Ryder, had donated to back in the late 90s. He remembered the plaque in the lobby, a bronze dedication to Tom Ryder for his commitment to supporting families in crisis. And yet, his father had never once mentioned a child besides Caleb and his older sister, Dakota. Below the stamp, another barely visible scrawl seemed to have been added after the original message. Baby transferred, no contact. The words punched the air from Caleb's lungs. Transferred? Why? And why would his mother have kept this photo hidden away? Before he could unravel that knot, a soft knock came from the doorway. A nurse he'd spoken with earlier, a woman in her early 40s with a calm face and dark braids pulled back neatly, stepped inside. "Mr. Ryder?" she asked gently. "Your mother is resting comfortably. Her core temperature is improving." Caleb nodded, relieved but still wired. "And the girl, Riley? She's stable," the nurse said with a warm smile. "A very resilient young woman. The doctor will talk to her soon." Caleb let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The nurse tilted her head slightly. "Was she a friend of your mother's?" Caleb hesitated. "I don't know yet." A long pause stretched between them before the nurse added softly, "She stayed awake almost the entire ambulance ride asking if your mom was okay. Someone who shows that kind of devotion, despite her own condition, that's rare." Caleb looked down at the Polaroid again. "Yeah," he murmured, "rare." When the nurse left, Caleb opened his phone and pulled up Mesa Valley's outdated online archive. Most files from the late 90s weren't digitized, but a few public records still existed. Enough to give him a starting point. He typed in the date from the Polaroid. December 1999, birth records, limited public index. A short list appeared. 7 births documented. He scanned the names quickly until one line froze him. Infant girl, Ryder, mother declined name. He reread it 3 times. Ryder, his surname, mother declined name, and an infant girl. His pulse thudded in his ears. Caleb's mother had always spoken vaguely about the years after Dakota was born. There had been whispers of postpartum depression, hospitalizations, stretches of time she didn't remember, pieces he'd brushed off until now. He clicked the entry. A note popped up.
Transferred to county foster services following maternal health concerns. No paternal claim documented. For a long moment, Caleb sat completely still. A sister, one he never knew existed. Born in secrecy, given up because his mother was too ill to care for her and his father apparently hadn't stepped forward. He stared at the Polaroid again, now electrified in his hands. The baby in the picture, the inscription, the averted truth, the missing piece of his family. And Riley, Anna, carrying that very photo for years without knowing the story behind it. Was it possible? Was the freezing, hungry young woman lying in the hospital bed 2 doors down his sister? The thought shook him in a way no bar fight, no crash, no loss had ever done. He stood, gripping the Polaroid so tightly it bent slightly at the edges. If Anna was family, if she had lived through homelessness because of choices his father made, then Caleb wasn't letting another second pass without finding answers. Just as he stepped into the hallway, a voice called his name. "Caleb?" He turned. Riley, Anna, stood in the doorway of her room, pale, weak, but awake. Her eyes met his, full of questions she didn't yet know how to ask. "We need to talk," she whispered. And Caleb realized, so did he.
Anna reveals a fragmented memory from her childhood. Something about a familiar biker jacket, a silver ring, and a man who once promised to return for her. Caleb's heart stops, recognizing the description instantly. But who was that man, and why did he disappear? Anna stood barefoot on the cold hospital floor, wrapped in a beige wool blanket the nurses had given her. Her hair was damp from thawing snow, her cheeks pale, but her eyes, those steady, dark eyes, were more awake than Caleb had seen them yet. He moved closer, hesitating at the threshold. "You shouldn't be standing. You lost a dangerous amount of heat. Come sit. I'm okay." She wasn't. Her legs shook like cotton threads, but she held her ground. Caleb guided her gently back into the room. The heater hummed near her bed, filling the space with warm air that smelled faintly of peppermint soap. Outside the window, snow continued drifting in slow, silent flakes, peaceful in a way the morning had not been. Anna sat on the bed and pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "You said you needed to talk. What do you remember?" Her eyes drifted to the Polaroid in his hands. She stared at it with reverence, as if it might dissolve if she blinked too hard. "When I was little," she began slowly, "I lived in a foster home in Phoenix. It wasn't good. The couple was strict, cold. They weren't abusive, not exactly. They just didn't care." She swallowed. "But before that, I have bits and pieces. Flashes. Someone holding me. Music. A warm jacket. And..." She closed her eyes and breathed shakily. "And a man." Caleb's muscles coiled tight. She continued, voice trembling. "He visited me. I think twice, maybe 3 times. I was really young, but I remember his jacket. It had a big stitched emblem on the back, a horse with fire around it." Caleb's heart slammed into his ribs. The Steel Stallions emblem. "My dad's club," he whispered. Anna nodded, and he wore a silver ring, thick, carved, with wings on it. He'd tap it on the crib rail when he talked. Caleb's blood went cold. That was my father, Tom Ryder. That ring's been in our family for decades. Anna searched his face for any hint of deceit. "He said he'd come back for me," she whispered. "He promised." Caleb's throat tightened. Tom Ryder was many things. Loyal to his club, stubborn as a mule, a man who kept secrets like locked doors. But abandoning a child? Not the man Caleb remembered. Unless the truth was more complicated. "He never told us about you," Caleb said honestly. Anna's face crumpled, but she didn't cry. She just stared at her hands as though trying to interpret lines carved there. "I grew up thinking he couldn't come back, or didn't want to." Caleb dragged a chair next to her bed and sat, elbows on his knees. "Listen, whatever happened back then, you deserved better. You deserved a family. Someone should have been there." A fragile smile touched her lips. "Someone was. Last night. Your mom." Caleb felt the weight of that truth. His mother had wandered into the freezing dark because of her illness, and Anna, a stranger, had been the one to save her. Not fate, not coincidence. Something stronger, like two broken branches drifting toward the same shore. He cleared his throat. "There's more you should see." He flipped the Polaroid around so she could read the faint handwriting again. She touched the words lightly. "For Anna, with all my love, 1999. "That's her writing?" Anna asked, voice soft. "Yeah, I've seen enough birthday cards to recognize it." She held the photo reverently. "She held me. She knew me. And still." "She was sick," Caleb said quickly. "My mother's had memory issues for a long time. Back then she had episodes. My father handled everything. And he handled me by giving me away." The bitterness in her tone wasn't sharp. It was just worn, resigned. Caleb shook his head. "No, look, when I checked the old records, it said you were transferred because of a medical situation with our family. It didn't say abandoned." "Then why didn't he come back?" Caleb didn't have an answer. But he had a suspicion. His father, near the end, had tried to tell him something, on his last night at the hospital. Caleb always assumed it was another lecture about the club. But what if it was something else? Something heavier? Before he could speak, a nurse entered. "Sorry to interrupt," she smiled warmly. "But Riley, Anna, needs rest, and her core temperature is still recovering." Anna nodded, but her eyes remained locked on Caleb's. "We're not done," she whispered. "No, we're just getting started." But as he stepped into the hall, his phone buzzed, an unknown number. He answered cautiously. A woman's voice spoke on the other end, low and strained. "Caleb Ryder, you don't know me, but I was there the night your father signed the papers for that baby. I think it's time you knew what really happened." Caleb's heart stopped. The mysterious caller claims to hold the final piece of the truth. Why Anna disappeared, what Caleb's father hid, and the shocking reason he was forbidden from bringing her home. But when Caleb meets her, he discovers a secret that threatens everything he thought he knew. Caleb stepped outside the hospital's sliding doors, breath fogging in the cold morning air. Snow still drifted lazily, muting the world in a white hush. The mysterious voice echoed in his mind. "I was there the night your father signed the papers for that baby." It felt like someone had reached into his chest and twisted. "Who is this?" Caleb demanded into the phone. "How did you get my number?" A tired sigh crackled through the speaker. "My name is Marcy Alvarez. I was a social worker at Mesa Valley back in '99. I handled neonatal cases, including the Ryder file." Caleb's jaw tightened. Why contact me now, 20-plus years later? "Because," she said, voice cracking, "I retired 3 months ago, and I've carried this guilt for too long."
Guilt. The word landed heavy. Caleb leaned against a cold metal bench, gripping the phone so tightly his knuckles whitened. "Where are you?" She said, "I'm in town. I never left. Meet me at the old Mesa Valley Archives building on 5th Street. There are documents, things your father never wanted anyone to see." Caleb's pulse thudded painfully. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. The Archives building was a squat, beige structure, tucked behind the newer wing of the hospital, a relic of the early 2000s. Caleb parked his truck and climbed the icy steps, pushing through the heavy door. Inside, the place smelled like dust, old paper, and cold metal. A woman stepped out from behind a filing cabinet. Late 60s, thin, silver braid down her back, glasses hanging from a cord around her neck. Her eyes were tired, the kind of tired that belonged to someone who'd watched too many stories unravel. "You're Tom Ryder's boy," she said softly. Caleb swallowed. "Yes, you said you had something to tell me." Marcy nodded and motioned toward a table where 2 file folders lay, edges worn. Caleb saw the faded label. Ryder, maternity hold, confidential. His stomach dropped. Marcy sat across from him. "Your mother, Martha, was very sick at the time. Severe postpartum psychosis. She didn't know where she was half the time. She didn't recognize people. She couldn't safely care for herself, let alone a newborn." Caleb nodded slowly. His mother's illness had shaped so much of his childhood, but she had always been gentle, kind, even in her confusion. "She wasn't dangerous," Caleb said, "just lost." "Yes," Marcy said softly, "but your father feared she might hurt herself or the baby accidentally. He requested a temporary hold in neonatal care until she stabilized." Caleb blinked. "Temporary?" Marcy slid the second file toward him. "And that's where things went wrong." He opened it. Inside was a stack of yellowing paperwork, signatures, medical notes, transfer documents, but one page caught his attention immediately. Infant transfer order, county foster services. Reason? Parental risk, no paternal claim documented. "No paternal claim?" Caleb whispered, stunned. "But Dad was right there. He signed." Marcy shook her head. "That's the truth he never told you. That night, your father signed the initial papers requesting temporary placement, but when the time came for the final signature to bring her home, he didn't sign." The ground tilted beneath him. "What do you mean he didn't sign?" "He backed out," Marcy said quietly. "Said it wasn't safe. Said Martha wasn't improving fast enough. Said you and your sister needed stability." Caleb felt heat rise in his throat. "My father would never abandon his own kid." "That's the thing," Marcy murmured. "The baby wasn't legally his." Caleb stared at her. "What?" "The paternity test your father requested that week came back inconclusive. There was a question about whether the child was biologically his or not." The room spun. No wonder the records were buried. No wonder his father never said a word. Caleb pressed a shaking hand to his forehead. "So he gave her up because he thought she wasn't his?" "No," Marcy said, leaning forward earnestly. "He gave her up because he was terrified. Terrified of losing your mother completely. Terrified of raising a child alone. Terrified the baby would grow up stuck between questions no one could answer." Caleb felt something break loose inside him. Anger, grief, unbelief. "And my mother?" he asked hollowly. "Did she know?" Marcy hesitated. She had moments, small moments, where she asked for the baby, asked for Anna, but by then, the decision was already made. Caleb's throat tightened. The image of his mother clutching Anna the night before flashed in his mind. Recognition. Loss. Love. She remembered, he whispered. Somewhere inside she remembered her. Marcy reached across the table and placed a trembling hand on the file. "I'm sorry," she said. "For 20 years I kept quiet. I thought I was protecting your family. But when I saw that girl, Anna, show up at the shelter last winter, I recognized her eyes. I recognized your father's ring scar on her wrist. She looks like both of them. Biology or not, she was meant to be a writer. Caleb stood up abruptly, the chair scraping behind him. I need to tell her. She deserves the truth, all of it. But as he reached the door, Marcy's voice stopped him cold. There's one more thing, she said, fear tightening her tone. Something your father hid, something he begged me to destroy. She held up a sealed envelope, yellow with age. It explains why he never came back for Anna, and why someone else tried to. Inside the envelope is a name. Someone from Caleb's father's past connected to the Steel Stallions. Someone dangerous. Someone who might still be looking for Anna. But what did this person want with her? And why did Tom Ryder hide the truth?
Caleb stared at the yellowed envelope in Marcy's trembling hands. Something about the way she held it, carefully, like it might combust, made his stomach twist. What's in that? He asked, voice low. Marcy swallowed. A name your father never wanted connected to your family again. Someone who was circling around the baby, around Anna, during those days in the hospital. Caleb's jaw tensed. Who? Why? Marcy pushed the envelope toward him. Open it. He tore the brittle seal carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice. The ink faded but unmistakable. One name sat in bold, forceful handwriting. Luther Kane. Caleb felt the world exhale sharply. No, it couldn't be. Luther? Caleb spat, heat flushing through him. He used to ride with the Steel Stallions years ago, before I was old enough to sit a bike. Marcy nodded slowly. He was your father's closest friend once, but something fractured between them, violently. After that, Luther was banned from the club. Your father told every public office, every nurse, every foster agency to never allow him near your family again. Caleb rubbed a hand over his face. What does he have to do with Anna? Marcy closed her eyes as if replaying something painful. When the baby was born, Luther showed up at the hospital demanding to see her. He claimed she was his daughter. Caleb froze. But the paternity test, he began. Tom requested one, but the samples were contaminated. We never got a clear result. Neither man would agree to another test. The tension grew ugly. Caleb felt sick. He knew stories of Luther Kane, how he drank too much, fought too easily, and held grudges like debts written in blood. But the thought of him showing up at a maternity ward, claiming fatherhood, that was a different darkness. Marcy continued, voice hushed. Your father was terrified that if Luther believed Anna was his, he'd take her, and Luther was unstable, dangerous even then. Caleb imagined his father pacing hospital hallways, torn between loyalty and fear. Tom Ryder had been a proud man, but he'd always protected his own. If he believed Luther might claim the child, or worse, maybe that was the reason he chose the unthinkable. Dad didn't give her up because he didn't want her, Caleb murmured, piecing it together. He gave her up because he was trying to keep her safe. Marcy nodded grimly. He begged me to destroy that letter, to erase every connection Luther had to the baby, but I kept it. I wanted a record, in case something ever went wrong. Caleb folded the paper with shaking hands. Does Luther know where Anna is now? Marcy said, I don't think so. He disappeared years ago, but if he's alive, and if he still believes she might be his, he could come looking, Caleb finished sharply. He thought of Anna, cold, trembling, barely alive last night, and the idea of anyone wanting to harm her filled him with a protective fury that burned hot through his bloodstream. He stood abruptly. I have to get back to her. Marcy caught his sleeve. Caleb, be careful. Your father carried this secret for decades. He knew exposing it could tear your family apart. No, Caleb said quietly. Keeping it hidden already did. The drive back to the hospital cut through icy streets and swirling snow. Caleb gripped the steering wheel tightly, Luther's name pounding in his head. Luther Kane.
the outlaw who'd once taught Caleb how to repair carburetors, the man who went from brother to enemy overnight, the ghost who vanished after Tom Ryder forced him out. Why had he wanted the baby? Why had he claimed her? Why had his father never said a word? When Caleb pushed the hospital door open, he saw Anna sitting up in her bed, staring anxiously toward the corridor as if she'd been waiting for him. Her eyes widened when she saw the envelope in his hand. "You found something," she whispered. Yeah, and you need to hear it." He pulled a chair beside her bed and unfolded the sheet again. Anna's gaze locked on the name. "Luther Kane? Who is that?" Caleb inhaled deeply. "A man. Someone from my father's past. Someone who thought you were his daughter." Anna's breath hitched. "Is that why I was given up? Maybe. Maybe it was the only way my father knew to keep you safe." Anna shook her head slowly, disbelief clouding her expression. "Safe from who?" Caleb hesitated. "Safe from a man who doesn't let go of what he believes is his, ever." Anna swallowed hard. "Is he still alive?" Caleb's eyes darkened. "If he is, we're gonna find out, because I'm not letting anything happen to you again." Anna stared at him with a calm fierceness. "Caleb, what do we do now?" He looked at her with a calm fierceness. "We start by uncovering everything Dad hid, and then we find Luther before he finds you."
The next morning, Caleb brings Anna home, but when they arrive, they find a fresh tire track in the snow near the broken gate. A track that doesn't belong to Caleb or any neighbor. Someone has already been there. The sun hadn't fully risen when Caleb pulled his truck into the long driveway of his property, Anna bundled in his spare leather jacket, staring anxiously out the window. The storm had calmed overnight, leaving a soft layer of untouched snow. Untouched, except for one thing. A deep, wide tire track curved from the roadside, straight toward the side gate Caleb found broken the night before. He slammed the truck into park. "Stay inside," he ordered. Anna's hand shot out, gripping his wrist. "Caleb, what if it's him?" He looked at her, truly looked, and saw real fear in her eyes. Not just fear of a stranger, but fear that history had finally caught up. "We don't know that," he said, voice steady. But inside, every muscle in his body coiled like a loaded spring. "I'll check it out." The cold bit through his shirt as he stepped out. The snow crunched beneath his boots, each step a reminder of the silence surrounding his home. Too quiet. He crouched near the tire track, running a hand through the impression. Deep, heavy tread. Off-road tires. A biker's tires. A kind he'd seen 100 times on rides. He followed the tracks to the gate. The lock was freshly broken, not frozen or worn. The metal still showed splintered lines from force. Whoever had been here had pushed their way in. Caleb's heart hammered. He scanned the yard. No footprints, no signs of entry, but the gate alone told him everything he needed to know. Someone had been close enough to look inside, close enough to see his house, close enough to see Martha, close enough to see Anna. He walked back to the truck, opened the door, and knelt so he was eye level with her. "Anna, did you tell anyone else who you were, at the shelter, on the street?" She shook her head rapidly. "No, nobody cared enough to ask." Caleb exhaled slowly. "Then whoever came last night wasn't looking for you by name. They were following something else." "Following me?" she whispered. Caleb hesitated. "Or following my mom." Anna's brows knit. Why would anyone follow her? Because the broken gate last night wasn't malfunctioning, it was tampered with. Because someone was watching. But he didn't tell Anna that, not yet. He drove around to the garage and cut the engine. "Let's get you inside. You need warmth and answers." The moment they stepped through the front door, Martha looked up from the couch where she sat wrapped in a blanket. Her eyes lit up. "Anna," she whispered. She remembers me?" "Sometimes memories come back in flashes. Go to her." Anna took a hesitant step forward. Martha reached out, fragile fingers brushing Anna's cheek. Tears gathered in the older woman's eyes. "I'm sorry," Martha said, trembling. "I'm so sorry I couldn't find you." Anna dropped to her knees beside her, overcome. "You didn't leave me. I know that now." Caleb stood back, throat tight. The bond between them was undeniable, something deeper than DNA and circumstances. He saw it in the way Martha relaxed beside her, in the way Anna instinctively leaned into her touch. But the peace shattered a moment later when Hank, Caleb's neighbor, burst through the front door without knocking. "Caleb," he called urgently, breath puffing in the cold air, "we've got a problem." Caleb spun. "Hank, what's wrong?" Hank yanked off his gloves. "I was out walking my dogs this morning and saw a man near the property line. Tall, wearing the leather cut, an old steel stallion's patch stitched over with black marker like he tried to cover it." Caleb's blood ran cold. "Did he say anything?" Caleb asked. "No," Hank said, "but he was watching your house. He took off when he saw me coming, headed toward the old service road." Anna shivered violently. "A patched vest? Could it be?" Caleb didn't let her finish. "It might be any drifter who got their hands on an old cut. Doesn't mean it's him." But the logic didn't reach his gut. Luther Kane was once a stallion. He would know their roads, their blind spots, their history. And if he was watching the house, he might already know Anna was there. Caleb turned to Hank. "Call me if you see him again, immediately." Hank nodded and left. When the door closed, the silence felt heavier than before. Anna's voice wavered. "What if he's looking for me?" Caleb stepped toward her, his tone fierce and final. "Then he's going to find something he didn't expect, a family standing between you and danger." Anna swallowed. "You don't even know if I'm really your sister." Caleb's jaw clenched. "Blood or not, you're family now." A knock suddenly rattled the back door. 3 slow, deliberate taps. Martha gasped, gripping Anna's arm. Caleb moved like a shadow, reaching behind the sofa where he kept a steel baton from his riding days. The taps came again, steady, intentional. "Stay here," he ordered quietly. Anna's hand shot out, gripping his wrist. Caleb approached the back door, heart hammering. He gripped the handle and pulled it open. A stranger stood there, the same off-road tracks still fresh behind him, and he wore a ring. A thick silver ring carved with wings. The same ring Tom Ryder once wore. The man at the door knows Martha, and he knows Anna, but when he steps inside and removes his helmet, Caleb realizes this man isn't Luther Kane at all. He's someone even more connected to the truth.
Caleb froze in the doorway. The man standing outside wasn't the monster he'd been bracing for. He wasn't hulking or wild-eyed, or carrying the dangerous tension that Luther Kane was notorious for. He was calm. Older, maybe in his early 50s, snow gathering on the shoulders of a worn denim jacket, and that silver ring, wings carved into the metal, glinted on his finger. The ring that matched the one Tom Ryder used to tap on tabletops when he was thinking. The man slowly removed his helmet, revealing a face with lines carved deep from weather, regret, and a life spent on roads that never led home. His blue eyes flickered as they landed on Caleb. Recognition, guilt, and something like relief. "You look just like him," he said, voice low. "Like Tom." Caleb gripped the baton tighter. "Who the hell are you?" The man stepped forward just enough for the porch light to illuminate his features. "My name is Jonah Burke," he said softly. "I rode with your father. I rode with Luther, too,
before everything fell apart. Caleb's pulse thudded. He'd heard the name Jonah Burke before, quietly, in pieces. He'd been part of the club in the late 90s, but disappeared without explanation, the kind of disappearance that usually came with bad blood or dangerous secrets. "What do you want, and why were you watching my house?" Jonah lifted his hand slowly, palms open. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here because I found out something Luther shouldn't ever find out first." At the mention of Luther, Caleb's grip tightened. "Talk," he ordered. Jonah's eyes slid past him, toward the living room where Martha and Anna were. "Not out here. Not with them listening, and not with the snow making footprints easy to follow." Caleb weighed the risk, but Jonah's movements weren't aggressive. If anything, he seemed afraid of being misunderstood, or maybe afraid of someone else showing up. "Fine," Caleb said. "Inside, but you stay where I can see you." Jonah nodded and stepped inside slowly, careful not to track too much snow onto the hardwood floors. The moment he entered, Martha's breath hitched. "Jonah?" she whispered. Caleb turned sharply. "You know him?" Martha blinked, confusion flickering across her features like lightning behind clouds. Then her eyes cleared for a rare, lucid moment. You were there, at the hospital. Tom told you to stay away." Jonah's shoulders sagged. "Yes, ma'am. I did stay away, for 20 years, and I would have kept staying away if I hadn't heard Luther was back in Arizona." Anna clutched the blanket tighter around her. "Why does he matter? Why do everyone keep acting like he's a threat?" Jonah looked at her, then really looked at her. His voice softened. "Because Luther believes you're his daughter, and Luther doesn't lose things quietly." Anna paled. Caleb stepped protectively between them. "Explain," Caleb ordered. Jonah took a deep breath. "Back in '99, the club was splitting apart. Tom found out Luther was making deals with people the Stallions would never touch, dangerous people. He tried to cut him off, but Luther didn't take rejection well." Caleb nodded once. This part aligned with what he'd grown up hearing, whispers of betrayal, of Tom Ryder putting the club above his oldest friend. Jonah continued. "When Martha got pregnant that year, Luther started saying things, accusing things. Said he and Martha had been close once." Caleb stiffened. "That's a lie." Jonah held up a hand. "I'm telling you what he believed, not what was true. Tom tried to get ahead of it. He asked for a paternity test before bringing the baby home." Anna looked down, swallowing shakily. "And when it came back unclear?" Jonah nodded. "Luther saw that as proof she might be his. He started showing up at the hospital, demanding access, starting fights." Caleb remembered his father's scar over his brow, a mystery scar he'd never explained. "He tried to take her," Jonah said quietly. "One night he nearly succeeded." Anna gasped. Martha began to cry silently. Caleb's voice cracked. "Why didn't my father tell me any of this?" "Because," Jonah said softly, "Tom was ashamed. Ashamed he couldn't protect his wife. Ashamed he couldn't claim the baby without risking her safety. And ashamed he pushed a child into the system to keep her out of Luther's hands." Anna's lip trembled. "So he chose strangers over me?" "No," Jonah said firmly. "He chose safety over chaos. He chose life for you, even if it meant losing you." The room was heavy with grief, truth, and the ghost of decisions made in fear. Caleb exhaled sharply. "Why now, Jonah? Why show up after all these years?" Jonah closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they shone with something fierce and urgent. "Because Luther's not done. I saw him last week.
He was asking around for Tom Ryder's family and about a girl named Anna. Anna's breath caught. Caleb stepped closer to her instinctively. He doesn't know she's here yet, but he will. And when he finds out, he'll come. He'll come hard. Caleb squared his shoulders. Then we'll be ready. Jonah shook his head. You don't understand. Luther doesn't just want her back. He wants revenge. He thinks Tom stole from him, and you, his son, are next on the list. Silence crashed over the room. Anna's voice softened. What do we do? Caleb answered before Jonah could. We bring the truth out of hiding. We find every file, every witness, every detail of what happened back then, and we end this before Luther starts something we can't stop. Jonah nodded slowly. Then there's one more thing you should know. Something I never told Tom. Caleb narrowed his eyes. What? Jonah hesitated, then spoke the words that sent a chill through the room. Luther wasn't alone the night he tried to take the baby. Someone from inside the hospital helped him. Someone still living in this town. Anna's breath caught. Caleb's fists clenched, and Martha whispered a single name under her breath, too faint to understand. The name Martha whispered, fragmented, nearly lost in confusion, might be the key to who betrayed the Ryder family decades ago. But when Caleb repeats it out loud, Jonah pales because he knows that name. And that person has already contacted Luther.
Martha's lips trembled as she whispered the name, barely audible, like a fragile memory rising from deep water. Elena. Caleb leaned closer. Mom? Who? Say it again. Martha's eyes darted between Jonah and Anna, fearful, lucid for a heartbeat. Her voice cracked. Elena. Winters. Jonah's entire body went rigid. Caleb frowned. You know her? Jonah's face drained of color. Yeah, I know her. She was a nurse at Mesa Valley back in '99. Worked in neonatal. She was on rotation the week Anna was born. Anna stiffened. You mean someone inside the hospital helped Luther? Someone who had access to the babies? Jonah nodded slowly. Elena was close to Luther. Too close. She fed him information. What room you were in, when nurses changed shifts, when Tom left the floor. Caleb's stomach twisted. So she's the one who almost helped him take Anna. Jonah exhaled sharply. Yeah. And when Tom and I caught Luther trying to sneak into the nursery, Elena suddenly requested a transfer and left the ward. Where is she now? Anna asked, voice small. Jonah hesitated. She works at the regional long-term care center on the west side, still in the medical field. Caleb's eyes narrowed. What does she want with my family now? Jonah rubbed a hand over his face. I didn't think she was involved anymore. Not until last night. Anna's breath caught. Last night? Jonah nodded grimly. I saw her at a bar on Route 39. She was sitting with Luther, and they were talking about unfinished business, about a girl who vanished from the system, about a Ryder secret. Caleb felt heat rise through him, rage, fear, protectiveness all tangled together. She knows Anna's alive. Jonah nodded. And if she knows, then Luther knows too. Anna wrapped her arms around herself. He's coming, isn't he? Jonah didn't sugarcoat it. Yes, and he won't come to talk. Caleb stepped closer to Anna, placing himself between her and the doorway, as though an attack could happen any second. He won't touch you, he said firmly. Not while I'm here. Jonah took a breath. Caleb, you need to understand something. When Tom confronted Luther back then, Luther swore he would get revenge, not just on Tom, but on the whole Ryder bloodline. Anna paled. And if he thinks I'm his daughter?
Jonah finished. He thinks you were stolen from him, and he wants you back, no matter what he has to do. Martha let out a soft whimper. Anna immediately knelt beside her. It's okay, Anna whispered to her gently. I'm here, Grandma. Martha blinked, hand shaking as she cupped Anna's cheek. I didn't want to leave you. I didn't want him to take you. Anna stared at her, tears welling. I know now. Caleb's heart clenched. His mother's moments of clarity were rare, but when they came, they sliced through the fog like lightning. Jonah cleared his throat. Caleb, you need a plan. Luther won't wait, and he's not stupid. He watched this house before he approached. I know. I saw the tracks. Jonah walked to the window and pulled the curtain back just an inch. He's not the type to act alone anymore. He got mixed up with outlaw crews after he left the Stallions, men who owe him favors. What are you saying? Caleb asked. Jonah turned around, his voice deadly calm. I'm saying he might not come alone. Silence spread heavy across the room. Anna's voice was barely above a whisper. What does he want from me? If he thinks I'm his daughter, why would he hurt me? Jonah's expression softened with pity. Luther doesn't think like a father. He thinks in terms of ownership. If he believes someone took something from him, even 20 years ago, he'll do anything to reclaim it. You're not a daughter in his eyes. You're a trophy. Anna recoiled, eyes burning. Caleb stepped toward Jonah. Then we make sure he never gets close. Jonah nodded. Agreed. But that means confronting him before he confronts you. And there's one more thing you need to know. Caleb raised an eyebrow. What? Jonah hesitated, then spit it out. Luther thinks Tom didn't die of natural causes. He thinks someone silenced him to protect the truth about Anna. Caleb's blood froze. That's insane. Maybe. Or maybe he's using that belief to justify whatever he does next. Anna looked at Caleb, eyes searching. What if he's right? What if your father didn't just get sick? Caleb's hands curled into fists. My father wouldn't let someone kill him without a fight. Jonah's voice turned low, urgent. Then you better be ready to fight the same war he died in. Suddenly, the house phone rang, an old landline Caleb rarely used. It startled everyone with its harsh, buzzing alarm. Caleb grabbed the receiver. Hello? A gravelly voice responded. You found my girl. Caleb's heart stopped cold. Luther, Caleb whispered. Anna's face drained of color. Luther's voice slid through the receiver like a blade. I'm coming to get her, boy, and nothing you do will stop me this time. The line went dead. Anna shook violently. Jonah reached for his jacket. He's closer than we thought. Caleb hung up the phone with a cold finality. Then let him come, he growled, because this time he's not taking anything from my family. As night falls, headlights appear slowly at the end of Caleb's driveway. Multiple bikes, engines rumbling like thunder. Luther didn't come alone, and this time he's bringing war.
Night fell like a curtain drawn tight across the horizon. The cold deepened, and then the sound came. A low rumble, followed by another, and another. Engines, multiple, rolling like thunder toward the Ryder property. Caleb stepped onto the porch, steel baton in hand, jaw tight with the kind of resolve that only comes when a man knows the fight has finally found him. Snowflakes glimmered in the beams of approaching headlights as several bikes slowed to a crawl at the bottom of the driveway. Anna stood behind the living room window, trembling but watching. She wasn't running this time. She wasn't alone. Jonah stood beside Caleb, cracking his knuckles. There are 5 bikes, he murmured. Could be Luther and a few of his boys. Caleb exhaled once. Then we finish this. The bikes rolled to a stop, engines cut. Silence swallowed the yard. Heavy, tense. A tall figure dismounted from the lead bike, leather cut patched over with crude stitching, boots crunching on snow. He removed his helmet slowly, deliberately. The porch light fell across his face. Luther Kane. Gray now streaked his beard, but his eyes, sharp, cold, calculating, held the same venomous pride Jonah had spoken of, the kind that aged but never softened. "Well, well," Luther drawled, spreading his arms, "Tom Ryder's boy, and look at you, standing in Daddy's shoes." Caleb didn't flinch. "You're not welcome here." Luther chuckled. "Not welcome? After 20 years of lies? After you people stole my blood out from under me?" Caleb stepped forward. "You almost kidnapped a newborn. That's why you were kept away." Luther's grin twisted. "I tried to save her. Tom didn't deserve her. Neither did your crazy mother." Jonah lunged, fury flashing, but Caleb threw an arm out to stop him. Luther wagged a finger, mockingly. "Careful now. Wouldn't want this to get messy before I see my girl." He looked past Caleb, toward the window where Anna stood. His gaze darkened with a possessiveness that made Caleb's stomach turn. "There she is," Luther murmured. "My daughter." Anna stepped back from the window, trembling. "I'm not your daughter," she whispered to herself. Caleb squared his shoulders. "You have no claim on her." Luther laughed sharply. "Claim? Boy, she's the only thing I've got left from the life your father stole, and I'm taking her home." "Home?" Caleb snapped. "You don't even know what that word means." Something ugly flashed across Luther's face. "Move," he ordered. "I'm not asking again." Jonah stepped forward. "You're not taking her. Not tonight. Not ever." Luther's men shifted, hands drifting toward their belts. Caleb's pulse thundered, but he stood his ground. "Anna is not yours, and she never will be." Luther's eyes narrowed. "Then maybe I take something else in trade." He lunged, faster than expected, rage fueling his speed. Caleb met him head-on. The two collided at the base of the steps, fist flying, boots scraping ice. Luther swung wide, powerful but sloppy with anger. Caleb dodged, landed a heavy blow to Luther's ribs, but the older man came back harder, years of bitterness giving every punch a brutal edge. Jonah engaged two of Luther's riders, blocking their path to the house. Snow sprayed under their boots as fists cracked through the cold air. Inside, Anna pressed her hands to the window, watching in horror, until Martha, from the couch, whispered shakily, "Go to him. He needs you." Anna opened the door and stepped onto the porch. "Caleb!" she cried. For a split second, Caleb glanced her way, and Luther seized the moment, grabbing the baton fallen in the snow. He raised it toward Caleb, but Anna let out a sound so raw, so desperate, that it made Luther turn. "Stop." The world held its breath. Anna stepped forward, tears streaming. "You think you're my father?" she cried. "A father protects. A father doesn't steal." Her voice broke. "The man who saved me was Tom Ryder, not you." Luther faltered, momentarily stunned. And in that heartbeat, Caleb surged upward, disarming him and pinning him to the ground with Jonah's help. Luther growled, thrashing, "She's mine." "No," Caleb said firmly. "She's her own, and she chooses who her family is." Police sirens wailed in the distance. Hank had called them when the bikes first arrived. Luther's men fled, engines screaming into the night. Luther himself was dragged to his feet as officers arrived. He locked eyes with Anna one last time, an expression caught between fury and denial. "You should have been mine," he hissed. Anna shook her head. "I was never yours." He was taken away. The yard fell quiet. Anna collapsed into Caleb's arms, sobbing. He held her tight, the snow melting on their jackets. "You're safe," he whispered. "It's over." Jonah exhaled shakily, leaning against the porch railing. "Your father would be proud, kid." Inside, Martha cried softly as Anna knelt beside her. "Mom," Caleb said gently, "we found her. We finally found her." And Martha, clear, lucid, overflowing with a mother's grief and love, cupped Anna's face. "My baby," she whispered. Anna wept into her shoulder. Caleb stood beside them, finally breathing again. Their fractured family, broken by fear, scattered by secrets, was finally whole. Not perfect, not without scars, but whole. And for the first time in 20 years, the Ryder home felt like home again.